We're counting down to almost 7 o'clock. Reagan and Cassie, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Great.
Sorry, can you hear me?
No, you're good. Is the music too loud on your end?
I actually can't hear any music.
You know what? It's interesting because I typically don't even start off with that music. I always have some other funky stuff, but I was just testing that out. So I just decided to play that. Reagan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear?
Am I too loud?
No, you're perfect. I just can't hear any music. I just heard your voice though.
You can't hear any music? Really?
No.
That's interesting. All right. Because I'm playing some background music. And Cassie, can you hear it? Is Cassie on?
I don't
So
think so.
I'm going
I
to
think it's
say
just
it again.
I just see from my end because I ended up doing it on my phone. And I just see the two of us in the call.
Okay, no worries. I'm going to play some more music, but for those persons who are joining us, I see that we have a few listeners already online. And so, welcome you to Healing of the Heart podcast. We're really excited to have you. Um, it looks like Cassie's on.
Oh,
Just
Cassie's
connect to
here.
Cassie. Cassie, you on? Just enter the live studio. So we're waiting for Cassie to log in. It seems like she's logged in, but I'm not able to hear her on audio. So we're going to wait for her to say something. But welcome to those persons who are on. Cassie just wrote in and said hi. Okay, great. Cassie, can you say hi so we can hear you? Oh, sorry, figured out Mike.
Hello, can you hear me?
Awesome. Okay, Regan, am I echoing?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
Hi.
okay. Hello.
How are
Good.
you?
How are you, girl?
Good. I was asking, am I echoing?
You are a little bit.
Okay. How about now?
It's better
That's
now.
better.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
That's good.
So typically, I usually kind of play some music a little bit because some persons usually join us, little by little. So, I play some contemporary stuff and give persons maybe 1 or 2 or 3 minutes to, join and kind of give you a chance to kind of, warm up too, if you will. So I'm going to play a little bit of funky stuff that I like to play. Other listeners, Cassie, you listened to my podcast before, you know the kind of stuff I play. I think
Yes,
this will be
I love
Reagan's first time. But I'm gonna play something called. It's a song. I love this guy's voice, and I always forget his name. It's such a shame, but I love his voice. He's African American, and he's young. He's in his early 20s, and this song that says "I'ma lean on you." I can't even try to do it. Plus, with my voice, I'm not even gonna try. But I'm gonna play the song because I like it. So here we go. And while I'm playing, I'm gonna grab some tea. You can do the same. Feel some type of way, try to escape the shadow. I wanna be okay, but nothing can take. Seems like it's working. My back's against the ropes. Even though I try to keep an open mind, I can't do this on my own. When I'm weak, you're strong. I'm a lean on you, but nothing else stands. Yes, I believe on you. It's out of my head. Yes, I believe on you. Yes, I believe on you. Pressure, pressure. Going through some crazy things, and I can't get away. Been trying to talk to you, but nothing can say. See how this works. And for the record, I like to sing too. Welcome to Healing Up the Heart podcast. Um, his name is Chandler Moore. That's his name. I did not look it up, I promise. I just happen to remember because I love his voice so much. but I love the song. Um, Cassie and Reagan, how are you feeling out there?
I'm feeling good.
I'm
You feeling
A
good?
little nervous, I guess.
I'm feeling good. I'm definitely a little nervous as well, but once we get to talking, I feel like it just flows.
You said you're feeling a little nervous?
Yes, but once you get to talking, it kind of just flows.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Awesome.
And I'm just making sure we're just doing sound. We're not doing like we're not visual right now, right? Or we're not going to
We're
be
not
visual.
visual right now. And to be honest with you, this is my first time trying to be visual. I mean, I do have the capabilities for it, but
Okay.
you know what? I think we are visual. I just don't know that we are. Does that make sense or not? Because I do have the capabilities for it. When I set up this podcast, my video camera is open. I think you guys have the tripods open too. So not so much on your end as it is on. Well, no, yes, on all ends, but I have it set up to be. So we'll see how this turns out because I'm not really sure. So I have to
Okay.
tell you that I'm just going with the flow on that tonight.
Oh yeah, we don't have to. That's fine. This is fine. I was just
Yeah.
making sure it was right on my end.
All right, so it's 7:06, and I'm gonna pause the music. That's what I typically do. I'm listening to myself, and I sound weird with my voice, and I'm echoing too. So I sound really weird with my voice, and I think I owe it to the listeners. Some persons already know that about a month ago I had a partial thyroidectomy, and so I had to like lose one of my thyroid glands, and so it really does alter, how you sound. It alters your sound, and typically when I start this podcast, I always kind of chime in singing, and I don't get to do that this time, which kind of makes me feel sad, but that's life. I had to take that out because it was 50% chance cancerous, so I couldn't take that chance, so I had to take it out. So if I talk and I pause a little bit tonight, bear with me, but I'm so excited to be back. I noticed that the last time I did a podcast was like around March 12th, and shortly thereafter, I had to do surgery, and I've been recovering. I'm fully back in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and I'm really happy to be back. And so, welcome to episode number 14. Can you believe it? Yep, it's episode number 14. And tonight, well, this evening, not night yet, but we have two amazing, amazing young adults on the podcast. And every time I do a podcast, I say, "Oh man, this is like the best podcast." I'm going to say it again because I really feel that way. And, honestly, I can't take a lot of credit for this happening, at least this episode. I really have to give all the credit to Cassie and Reagan because they were very instrumental. I remember when Cassie said, we should do a podcast. I'm like, really? Really? She says, yeah, yeah, yeah. I like it. We should do it. And I said, you know what? There's another person who talks just like you. And I said, I think it'll be amazing. Let's see what happens. And so this is how this podcast came together. I had really had nothing much to do with it. And I know it just warms my heart to have both of them on tonight. We're going to learn a lot from them. I'm always learning from them. I'm always in a position to learn. So tonight, I'm hoping that, you will learn a lot from them too. And we're going to have fun too. We're not going to have, just like this, humdrum kind of deal, which we never do on this podcast. We always have fun. So I'm going to pause again here, and I'm going to finish playing that song when I get back. I'm going to kind of introduce myself, although I've been talking so much already. But I'm going to introduce myself for those who maybe join the podcast for the first time. And yes, I'm from the Caribbean too, and I talk fast. I can, so I'm going to slow it down just a little. And by the way, Cassie or Reagan, I was feeling a little bit nervous too. Can you believe that?
Really?
Yeah, I was. I said to myself, why am I getting worked up? I'm like, oh my gosh, I've done this quite a few times by now. I've had other guests on the podcast, but like I don't know
Uh-huh.
why. Maybe because it's such an important topic. Not like others aren't, but it's really, really special to have both of you on. And yeah, I think that has a lot to do with why my nerves are a little bit kind of, working up a little bit. But let's
Yeah.
finish playing a
Oh,
little bit of Shen Lamore, and we're gonna get back, and then I'm gonna introduce myself formally, if you will, and then we'll introduce both of you. How does that sound? We're gonna
Okay.
have fun,
sounds
okay? Remember, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I like this guy's voice. Did I say that already? Yes, I did. I really do.
he has a nice voice.
I love his voice. Very raspy. He's young too. Very young guy.
Hmm.
You should look him up. Chandler Moore. Very talented. He plays all
Chandler
kinds of
Moore.
instruments. And Reagan,
Cool.
did you play instruments too?
I did. I played the violin, I played the baritone, and I played the
Oh
saxophone.
my
See? Yeah.
gosh.
Right?
I love it.
They were
Yeah,
all very fun, but the saxophone was my favorite out of the three.
That's what stood out to me. I know I love the sound of saxophone.
Yes, and it's just when you play it, I don't know, you can feel like it's different than the violin or the baritone, like, 'cause you can kind of feel the vibrations a little bit more when you're playing, and you get to play a lot of like the fun melodies, so it's really fun.
I love that.
I love that song. All right, time to get started or time to continue. So, as I said before, I'm happy to be here. I feel kind of weird a little bit being out for about a month. I'm doing a podcast. It's like I had to get back into swing. Even though I was like putting all the equipment together, I was like, oh, where does this go? Where does that go? Make sure the mic works. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be back. Keisha Henry with Healing Up With Our podcast. I am, let's see, I'm quite a few things. The number one thing I like to say is that I'm a wife and a mom. I like these two roles a lot. I've grown into them, to be honest, right? If you listen to this podcast, in it all, you know that's true. One thing I hate to be is pretentious. That's not one of my qualities. Sometimes I'm a little bit too blunt. But I am a wife and a mom. And equally important, I guess, for the show, I am a licensed clinical social worker psychotherapist, and I practice here in Green Acres, Florida, and Boca Raton, and actually throughout the state, actually, right? And so I have grown very fond of New Beginning Healing Institute, which is my primary practice. And from doing this work, I've been practicing for 17, 18 years. And I don't know, in the last 5 years, I've gone to private practice and I seem to really love it a whole lot more. I've met a whole lot of, really beautiful women and men. I would like to mention that. And you're probably wondering how this podcast got started. Oh, yeah. In the last year, I, published my first book titled Healing of the Heart, which is the name of the podcast. And that's how this podcast came. Really, if I were to summarize this book, and Cassie, I might ask you to reflect on what's your favorite poem in that book. I forgot to mention, I'd ask you, but I'm going to put you on the spot later on. But anyway,
Okay.
um, I that's Healing Up the Heart, Keep the podcast. And if I were to summarize what this book is about, that really, spawned this podcast, I would say that it's a book that talks about the formation of the self, okay, and the formation of the self influenced by, environments, by caregivers, by authority figures, by, objects, physical and, inanimate objects in our lives, and, how the shaping of all of those things really impact one's self-esteem and view of themselves and the world. And so, Healing Up the Heart book then is a prose and poetry workbook that really reflects all of those elements or themes. And it helps women basically, because I really do focus this book on women. It really allows persons to engage the content and then just and make a decision about what they decide to do. And so that's Healing of the Heart book. And I love it a lot. And this is a good time to tell you that it's finally on Amazon, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into the show. So that's who I am. So I'm going to pause right here and allow Cassie and Reagan to introduce themselves. And after they do that, I'll go a little bit more into what this podcast is and what it's not. How about that, ladies? Let's go.
Yes. Do you
That
want to
sounds
go
great.
first, Megan, or I'll go?
Sure, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Reagan Shepherd, and I am in my senior year at the University of Florida studying journalism, sports, and media. I grew up moving around a lot as a child. My dad played football in the NFL, so I was constantly on the go. So I got used to kind of, getting comfortable, but then moving and then getting comfortable again. So traveling is definitely something that I aspire to incorporate into my life when I grow and have a career. But yeah, my ultimate goal with my journalism major is to have a talk show and create a space to where we can talk about important topics and just have healthy conversation, because I feel like that's something that kids should see a lot growing up, and healthy conversation between adults and just growing individuals. And so this is perfect because being on the podcast, because this is definitely something that I'm passionate about, just creating spaces to where you can converse and share your ideas and opinions in a healthy way, even if you don't always agree. So I'm very, very happy to be here. And thank you again, Keisha, for having me.
Oh, wow. So we're going to do this right here.
Yes, right here.
Right here. Clap, clap, clap.
Right
I
now.
like that.
Oh my god.
I love it. Oh, I can't wait for us to keep talking. Thank you so much, Reagan. I could never have introduced it that way. That's why I love that you loved your introduction. I love it. So with that,
Oh.
Cassie, it's your turn.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Cassie. I was born here in South Florida. I'm 28 years old. I grew up down here. I attended public schools. I completed my associate degree at FAU, and that was a lot for me. And I kind of did things backwards. So I completed my associate there, and I decided to go to Broward College to finish my bachelor degree in education. So I have a degree in exceptional student education, K through 12, and I loved it there. It was more my speed, and like it all worked out. So I went the opposite way. Most people, I think, go to like a college and then university, but I did the opposite. I feel younger and influenced by everyone. So I just thought the right thing to do was go to this university, and I didn't have any background or my own thoughts. So it was like, that's the path I took, but it ended up working out because I loved it at Broward. And right now I graduated December of 2021. I love teaching. That is fully my passion, but I decided not to go right into teaching when I graduated because just the state of education right now, and not, there is so much to say about that, but with what I want to do and the impact I want to have on like kids, I feel I can do more of that outside of like a brick and mortar school. Um, yeah, I feel I can do more of that and have more resources without like working the full day in and out. So right now I'm just working in hospitality, working on my creativity. I also love to model, dance, write. I love music. I just love the creative. So I was hoping to just build myself and hopefully find my way back to children and contributing to their curriculum.
Well, thank you. Nice. I wish you could see my face. I have to work on that.
You're breaking up a bit. I don't know.
What was that?
I can't quite hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you that well.
No. How about now?
It's just super staticky in the back and kind of like a lot of background noise, it sounds like.
How about now?
It's better.
Much better? Okay, very good. Excellent.
Okay.
So I thank both of you for your introductions. And I see we have quite a few. We have 7 persons on that are listening, or four listeners on right now. I can't tell. I never can tell. And I never look at that. And so you shouldn't be looking at that either, okay? Just don't even look at it. Just have fun. All right. So, I promise to share, about what this podcast is and what it's not. And it's, as a therapist, it's always important to, create a space of safety. And this podcast is no different. I do this every single episode because it's so important, right? One of our code of ethics. And so, on this podcast, we talk about a lot of sensitive things, just like the book, Healing of the Heart. That's a very, I've had a lot of comments about that book. That's a heavy book, or wow, or I just heard a lot of things. And so, I get that. This podcast can sometimes feel very heavy. It can be triggering. Listen, when I was in graduate school, I was trained on, you're never not going to be able to trigger someone. It's just not possible. So because of that, then, if this material or content becomes too hard, stop listening. Like literally just stop. As a matter of fact, we're going to plan ahead of time that if this gets too heavy, that you're going to take a walk outside. You're going to do something that's distracting, maybe play some music, do something that's totally opposite from what we're doing right now. And so maybe you want to listen with a friend or somebody else. I don't know. But whatever you need to do to keep yourself safe while we're talking on this podcast, that's what I encourage you to do. So that's the first thing, safety, okay? So what is this podcast is? What this podcast is, it's giving you a chance, as Reagan said, creating a safe space to talk about important topics and subtopics.
I still talk over my words with my throat. Anyway, and so that's what we strive to do. It's not a place where we point fingers at anyone. That's not what it's about, because then that's not healing, right? That's actually just recycling, like toxic things. But what we do is we step back and we look at things, we talk about things, and we ask questions. And from there, we become curious and really become investigators. And so then we can provide ourselves options to change. So that's what this podcast is and what it's not. And so what else I want to cover? Yes, when I do this podcast, sometimes people write in, they ask questions, and what can I do with this, or where can I go with that? Same things, possible here. You can chat in, or email. If you want to follow up, that opportunity is there too, because again, you can't open things up and not provide space for you to continue to work through things. So, healing of the heart, we're here, New Beginning Healing Institute, so we're here. So with that said, we're going to pause again. We're going to play a little more music real quick, and then we're going to come back. And then we're going to really just jump right into this podcast. So here we go. What am I going to play next? I don't know. You know what? I found this funky song. My daughter says, Mom, that's so corny. She says, you should not play that. But because I am crazy, I'm going to play it anyway. How about that? Here we go. Kyra is 17. I often talk about her on here. And she says, Mom, please don't do that. She's listening right now, I'm sure. And I'm going to do it. I said, this is for the young people. She says, Mom, they're not going to like it. I'm doing it anyway. This is a contemporary artist. I wouldn't quite say, I don't know what to call him, but I like his lyrics. This is, the topic tonight, Caribbean culture. I think this fits right in. So listen to the song. It's really cool. She's probably dying right now. She says, Mom, you should not play that. So, ladies, while I play this, crazy song, as my daughter would say, I'm going to kind of, as we come back in, we're going to just jump right in. So, I know you're ready, and we're going to have fun.
Yes.
I'm super excited.
I can tell. I just wish I can see your faces. Oh, my gosh.
I'm equally nervous.
You're both nervous, and you know what's going to be interesting when you play this podcast back?
I thought of it already.
when I listen to the podcast back, I'm like, did I really say that? Oh my gosh, I was really fired up. Oh my, did I really go that deep? Yeah, I go back and I listen to the podcast. I'm like, but that was a good podcast. It was authentic and it was honest. Yeah, and that's what I strive for. So that's what we're going to do. And you know what? I really shared this podcast with the younger platform, with their age group. It was really important. And so I know that it's going to be downloaded and persons are going to be listening to this. So we really want to connect with persons who are closer in age to both of you, because this is important. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I made sure to do that. It's a big deal. Can't wait to hear my daughter says, Mom, you really played that. All right, so let's go. We're going to fade this out. All right, so let's go. So here's the first question. So let me just share a little bit about the topic. So emergent adult, Caribbean culture, mental health. So I think it's only fair. Persons are asking, well, why Caribbean culture? So I think it's fair to start with, maybe you guys want to share a little bit about your background. Like, how do you connect with the Caribbean culture? What about you and your background is Caribbean? Do you care to start with that?
Yes. I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
So what comes to mind for me first? I actually wrote down some words. We had a chance to kind of discuss what we wrote, but when I came across this question, some words came to mind, and that I would relate to my culture. So both of my parents were born in Haiti. I was born here in South Florida, so I'm first generation. My God, my voice is losing me now.
It's okay.
So yeah, some words that I would associate with my culture are festive, very family oriented, like what's the word? Like we show Like if someone comes over, you're a good host, but that's just kind of like your demeanor with everything. You make sure that, like if you do something, you do it well, and if you're doing something for someone, you do it in the best way. Like you cater to people. I guess that's what I would say. So that's what comes to mind when I think about the Haitian culture and things that stick out to me and what I reference with my family. What about you, Reagan? Any
So,
words that
sorry, I can't. You were fading out a little bit at the end. Um,
sorry,
but
should I repeat it?
well, yeah,
Yeah,
just repeat.
yeah. Please let her repeat the last part. Yeah, I'd appreciate that too, and for our persons who are listening.
Okay. Was I whispering? Is that why I tend to do that when I'm nervous? Okay. So I was saying that some words that like came to mind when I thought about the Haitian culture and how I relate to my culture are just the festivity of it, um, the family orientation, like how a lot of family, lots of parties, and the last thing I said was just how we cater to people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if that was just my family, my culture, like like I don't know what to attribute it to, but I would say because I've seen like um, the elders in my family act that way or treat other people that way, and the word that comes to mind is cater. Like, and I
Hater.
yeah, like when I at least for myself, if I'm doing something for someone, I like do it in the best way, I present it in the best way. That's something that stuck out to me.
Okay, thank you for that. Good.
And I can understand where you're coming from when you say that. I think a lot of maybe like a nurturing and like they give like a nurturing sense, like a nurturing energy.
Yeah,
But for me, so my mom's side is Caribbean, and her family they're Cuban, Haitian, and Bahamian. And her so when it comes to I guess the influence that Caribbean culture has had on me growing up, I did grow up in Miami for well in South Florida for part of my life, and but not for my entire life. And I think that played a part as to how much I was exposed to because all of my mom's family lives in Miami, and you're only really you only really get a chance to experience that when you're there firsthand with everybody. So being that my dad was playing football and I was moving around a lot, I grew up always far away from my grandparents kind of until we moved down there, but we didn't stay for long. So I feel like my mom kind of had more of a more Caribbean influence in her upbringing opposed to me just because I was separated, but I think it had an impact on me in a sense that my mom kind of rubbed like that's the way that she raised me from what she had known growing up. So I think it presented itself in terms of one, I always know like when it comes to Caribbean culture, I think music, I think family, I think large gatherings, I think always dancing, everybody's always having a good time. Like when I was living in Miami with my family, that's the one thing I miss is because it's always a sense of like community and um I'm a like music and art and dance, they're really important to me as somebody who did sports growing up, and just and it's one of the ways I can express myself. And it's through whether that's through dance or physical activity or listening to music or playing an instrument, like those things are all important to me. So and I think that comes through in Caribbean culture. But I also think it has the opposite side as to where mental health and your emotions and speaking up for yourself as a child, those are things that aren't really talked about and accepted.
right.
So it's also something that I think I experienced growing up was just a lack of flow and conversation about emotionally moving topics and being able to feel like I could say certain things. That took some time for me to feel comfortable in that area. But I think that's just there's two sides to everything. So it's about it kind of balances it out, I guess. But yeah, that's a little bit of I don't know if that necessarily answered the question.
So I think that we're having a flowing conversation, as you said. No, that's great.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it seemed like you both have some similarities in your experience with having a background with Caribbean parents and families. So you have some similarities there. So I was just curious then. So with the topic then, what are some driving factors, or maybe what motivates you to actually come on this podcast? I mean, why do you care about this topic?
Well, I can say that since getting into college, I think I've started to think about things a little differently. Partly because the topics were introduced to me like through me having to write it for a paper for class or something, or whatever the case may be. But my first year in college, I did a paper on intergenerational communication, and ever since I did that paper, I've kind of said that moving forward, that's something I want to talk about and bring awareness to, and because it directly ties with emotional intelligence. And when you're in most Black families or Caribbean families, they don't really talk about mental health, and that results in a lack of intergenerational communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming on this podcast was a way for me to, I guess, bridge that gap. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a way to bring awareness to certain things that I feel like maybe should be talked about more. And I can share my experiences with them.
Okay.
I like that you
Yeah.
said that this is a way to bridge the intergenerational uh, the lack of intergenerational emotional discussion. Is that how
Uh
you word
huh. Yeah, like, yeah, intergenerational communication.
it? Of that? Oh my goodness.
It's a mouthful.
Intergenerational communication. Yeah, that.
Oh my gosh, I'm a teacher, which sounds joking, but like the reason I'm a teacher, it's not like the knowing of everything. It's like the exploration of it all and like discovery. So I don't know. I'm not gonna be the most
Oh,
I
it's
know
okay.
everything.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. I think we're having a flow here. Let's keep it going. It's all right.
Oh my goodness. But yes, I love what you said. That will stick with me. Um, but similar. Wait, were you done?
I love
Yeah.
it.
No, keep
They,
going.
no, yeah, I was just saying, like, it's just the way I like that. Like, this is a space where we can talk about, like, for example, I wouldn't say like my family and I, we're really good. I think we've grown when it comes to talking about our feelings. So, but we weren't always that way. But there are also families that, maybe don't communicate as efficiently as we do, or they do it better than we do. So I think it's just about sharing your story and seeing how, like, it might not be the same as everybody else, but this was my experience with it. And it shows you like the range and the depth and like
Yeah.
the variety of everything. And I think it's so good to just, get everybody's perspective on it and, all that.
You know what? You talked about that paper, that intergenerational paper that you wrote
Hmm.
about, and there's some information or like cutting edge research that you found out. Well,
Hmm.
what was important to you? What did you learn from that paper? Can you share some of that? You said you want to bring some of that to the podcast, so yeah, I'm interested. What did you share about that?
Yeah. So basically, I was just researching and writing about how intergenerational communication is linked to emotional intelligence.
Uh huh.
And in my research, I always kind of like, astrology is not to bring astrology into this, but
That's okay.
it, it kind of, it made sense in my brain when I was reading it, because when it comes to astrology, there are certain placements and like certain things about people's charts that are broken up by generations. So it made
Mm-hmm.
it really easy for me to kind of digest the information. But baby boomers were born in a time that was really, sorry, this is one of the main points before I go too deep into it. This is one of the main points that I found. Baby boomers they were born in a time in America where it was, you couldn't talk about anything mental health wise. Baby boomers are around the 50s, 60s era. And they were in a time where it was work, work, work. And that trickled down, that mentality, because they're in the era of the civil rights movement was coming up, and people were fighting for their rights, but also just fighting to provide, like, put food on the table. So there were a lot of different things going on in the world, coming off of the World War II and all those things. So millennials, most baby boomers had children who were millennials, and millennials developed that same mentality, in the sense that a lot of millennials that I've talked to, the older millennials at least, they were like, I knew I needed to provide for my family because I had it a little tough growing up, or my mom and my dad worked a 9 to 5, and that's what they were used to. And these values kind of just trickle down and down. And so if you don't have this communication, you're not really going to understand what was learned, and you won't be able to talk about how maybe things are different and how they've changed or how they're still the same. And so for us as Generation Z, a lot of us have parents who are millennials because just of how timelines played out. That same ideology is affecting us. And I always say it's not a coincidence that a lot of Gen Zers have anxiety and are struggling with all these things. We were already born in a world that was post 9/11, so we were dealing with that effect on our country. And then we are growing up in a time with mass shootings and just all these different types of technological issues that are affecting us. So intergenerational communication is kind of more important now than ever, because the lack of communication just can cause a person's mental health to decrease. And when a group of people is already experiencing those traits a lot earlier and more consistently, I think it expresses the need to have these tough conversations with families and parents and grandparents and things like that. But that was
Since
basically what this, sorry, what it said.
no, 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 that was great. And then when you add the Caribbean part to it, from having this stoic background wherein they don't talk
Exactly.
either. So
Exactly.
what kind of outcomes can we expect, or what kind of outcomes have both of you experienced possibly?
I
And I'm gonna throw in there too. And then with you, Reagan, with your dad playing NFL, moving around. Wow, wow.
hmm. Yeah, I would say, coming from bringing, like, I guess, the Caribbean upbringing into that, there are certain things that like, for example, I say my mom just because that's her upbringing. I'll speak on my dad, but my mom's like, my mom's values are Caribbean rooted, because her dad was Haitian. Her dad was the first of his siblings born in the States, but his older siblings were all born in Haiti, and his younger siblings were born in Miami. So he was kind of like the bridge, but he didn't really grow up with all his siblings. So he had a different outlook on the world. But, my grandma, his mom, still had a voice in raising my mom, as well as my mom's mom, who's her family's Bahamian. So it's they kind of all shaped her mindset. So I guess some things that I remember were just like, I had to be growing up. I was always thinking I had to be a doctor or a lawyer or something in that realm, because that's what my parents would tell me. That's where the money's at. That's where you got to go to provide for your family.
Right, right.
And I know that's common amongst, like, that's not just a Caribbean thing for doctors and lawyers. I know it's heavy in other Asian families, and just from people I've talked to, and they share their experiences with their families and what they expect for them to do in life. But that is something that is highly prevalent in the Caribbean community. Just going to college and getting a good education, providing for your family, finding a husband, all these things. And it's just like a structured life that I think they expect you to have. And it's not until, your children go into the world and times change, and where you can express that, maybe I don't want to follow this direct linear path, and I want to go try different things. And I think that's where my dad kind of comes into the mix, because my dad didn't have a traditional, like, trajectory. My dad played football. He didn't even finish college before he went to the NFL. So he didn't go the whole doctor lawyer route, and he followed he followed his creative passions. And so I think that's where my parents do kind of balance each other out, because my mom, she's a pharmaceutical sales rep, so it's not a typical, 9 to 5, but it is still in that corporate world. And then my dad had the professional athlete, so, but that still came with its its setbacks, because moving around a lot as a child, you're forced to adapt, you're forced to get to know new people. So I thought I considered myself a social person because, you know, I was constantly having to make new friends. But when I got to college, I realized that, like, I'm not, in the sense that I really appreciate being stable. And
Okay.
yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So
Yes.
yeah. I don't want to keep talking without letting Cassie share. So I'll
No,
let
I was listening.
I
go
appreciate that,
ahead.
but I'm going to segue here. So basically, what I hear you saying is that, okay, so the Caribbean background, being stoic, having their own, for lack of a better word, dysfunctional ways of communicating, having, their hard and fast rules or ways about what we should be. And again, it sounds like you're saying they're basing that on economy because they want their kids to have a good life, but they're not really having conversations. So their intentions are generally in the right place, but the way how they go about that really affects millennials or Gen Z's mental health, and then intergenerationally that just seems to just be carried forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and really quick, I just feel like because Caribbean families have a hard time of not like victimizing things, like situations and like themselves, in a sense where, like, from I always would hear the phrase, like, we didn't have it that easy growing up. Like, we have it way easier than we have it. Like,
I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'm so guilty.
you know, and that might be true, but we have it hard in our own ways.
That's
And
it.
yeah, you know,
Yeah,
like, so it's not about comparing our struggles. It's about, like,
Wow.
maybe emphasizing with each other's struggles and recognizing we might feel similarly from different in different ways, like from different sources, but it might make us feel a similar way. So we should be able to relate to that instead of trying to compete.
I guess that that does strike a chord with me
Mm-hmm.
because I saw firsthand, I guess just the hard work that like my parents did
Mm-hmm.
just for like the necessities, working
Mm-hmm.
often. Um, and I guess how that ties into mental health is just I I mean
You're doing
because of
fine. You're doing fine.
because of thank you. Because of knowing that and knowing how hard they have to work and knowing that like we were provided for, it it was kind of like this constant battle in your head, like if things weren't
Mm,
healthy or safe, didn't
mm,
feel that way, that you should be okay because you have a roof over your head, you have food,
mm-hmm,
and you
mm-hmm.
see
This
how
is so.
hard they're working, and you're also seeing, I mean, as you get older, like there are words that you can put to, um, I guess, how your parents are, certain mental health issues or like disorders or things that they're struggling with. You can put
Mm-hmm,
names to them, but
mm-hmm,
as you're growing up, you're just that was a constant battle. I'll say that. Being in the
mm-hmm,
Caribbean household, knowing how hard they're working,
mm-hmm,
um, but knowing that the environment's still not like not healthy, but you're
mm-hmm.
not allowed or able to say that or feel okay with saying that because I mean you have what you need, right?
Right. Oh, wow. That's profound.
And as a child, it's like you know that and you feel like the stress of that, like that they're working very hard. I don't want to repeat myself, but I'll
You're
just
doing fine. No, repeat it. Somebody might want need to hear that. Repeat it.
yeah, that's just a major thing. Because as a kid, like you you feel everything.
You
And
do.
yeah, I'll say that. And you see everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just say that.
That's cool. Now, you know what? See right here, it goes to show you that no two persons are alike. Okay, because you're both, have a Caribbean background and influences, but it's influencing. It has shaped your mental health in different ways. And you can hear that coming across. You can hear that. You can hear the diversity in that, and it's important to be able to say that, and it's important that like listeners hear it. Other teens and emerging adult. Like I like that word emerging because you're emerging, right? And what are you emerging from? You're emerging from a lot of stuff that you just said. Can you imagine? You're emerging from a lot of things that you just said, and with this emerging, right? How does that? So that takes me to my next question. So we're gonna pause here for a little bit. We're gonna play some music, right? And we're gonna like just recollect a little bit. Maybe it's a good time to get some water or tea. Reagan and Cassie, you guys are doing an amazing job. I mean,
Thank you.
tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. People are still joining the podcast. If you look, well, don't, I told you not to look. I told you not to look. I'm saying, oh yeah, look. But I'm gonna play some. This is a song by John Yardy. It's called Friends and Family. It's again, I think he's from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm gonna play that so you guys can take a little bit of water break or tea, whatever you want. So here we go. 3 minutes. All right, we're back. We're back. Did you get something to drink, both of you? I hope so. What did you do? I hope you did.
I got
Yes.
water.
I got some tea.
Okay, good. I know. I'm sipping on some down here too. It's good. I have what am I having? I'm having lemon ginger plus probiotics. You don't have to put the health stuff in there. I better, right? I want to keep my other thyroid gland good, right? I need to keep it well. Oh my gosh. I'm having a lot of fun with both of you. I'm telling you, you know what? I can't wait to play this podcast back. I'm serious. Like, wow. Oh my gosh.
kind of
Thank you.
do, but I'm also like, oh, I don't know if I'll feel cringe or I'll be happy.
You'll probably a little bit of both because that happens to me too. It's okay. It's the human experience, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
But we're having fun, and that's great. And we left off at a great, I don't know, segue there, great transition point, because I think now's a good time to talk about, you know, how have you taken your mental health into your own hands? Because you know what, you're emergent adults, right? We talked about a lot about influences and shapings, right? So one of the questions I'd like to ask, what it's actually layered. How has the way you've cared about your mental health changed across your lifespan so far? And middle to high school to now. In what ways, have that really changed in terms of how you care for your mental health back then in your family versus now? Like, where are we? How would you answer that? In other words, where's now with you? What are you doing about it? Or what have you done?
Cassie, would you like me to start?
No, Cassie, why don't you start this time, Cassie? Huh?
Okay. Um, so I'll say, I guess I can start with, because when I'm younger, I wouldn't say that I thought about my mental health, and I wonder if other, I guess, teens or younger kids have that language. Maybe
Oh,
more
wow.
so now, I feel, and that's like part of what I want to do as a teacher, especially all that I've learned in my sessions with you. I, s- I want to work on a curriculum for like self love. Like I feel like that's
Oh,
for
awesome.
kids and
I like
Yes.
that.
building that. So when you say like how has my care for my mental health changed, like as a young kid or teen, that I mean I wouldn't say that existed because in school I don't think you're given like tools or language. I'm sure, of course, there's a school counselor and things like that, but it's not.
Not sufficient.
I mean, even within the curriculum, though, like you're not taught about yourself or
Mm,
um,
Mhm.
emotional intelligence, like nothing related to that. So,
mm.
yeah, I definitely didn't think about it then. In my teens and early 20s were tumultuous, and it's my early 20s that I I came to realize like how um, just detrimental it was, like being in an unhealthy environment in my home. And I guess I'll say like a pivotal moment, and that was when I finally decided to move out. I'd been planning for a while, but it kind of happened unexpectedly. But when it did, it was pretty like quickly how things panned out, and it worked out amazingly. But when I moved out, I moved in somewhere where I felt very safe, and it was with my best friend. We moved in together. I consider her a sister. But early on, I'm in this wonderful place, our own apartment, and I found myself like extremely anxious
Like Reagan was talking about that anxiety, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
and not not feeling still, like not feeling safe, like
Mm-hmm.
in this nice apartment with someone who I that's my sister, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and nothing, it's not even like anything necessarily happened, but I would just find myself like literally crying and overwhelmed at like, I guess, comments
Mm-hmm.
and things presenting themselves as them like it should be okay. Like I'm in a nice place, a safe place with someone who's, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I'm feeling inside. So, and before I moved out, it was already a conversation of like looking for a therapist. And I will say like I obviously like therapy and mental health is being talked about more and more. So I'll say like in my early 20s that language and stuff I've heard of it, I guess between TV. I guess I would say through media and TV.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not foreign, like it's new, but it was talked about more and more. And friend like actually yeah, friends, we'll say friends.
Mm-hmm.
They referred me to who they used, and they were referred by a friend
Okay.
for therapy. So that's how I finally honed in and found a good therapist. And I was trying from when I still lived at home, but when I moved out, it's when it was just like necessary and
Mm-hmm.
came together. So like now that I'm older, like, and I guess it's been a few years now that I've been doing or having therapy. I'll say like how it's transformed is like, even if financially it seems like unattainable in the moment, I make it a priority because, um, like anything else, like, it's your health. And I realize the importance. So no matter what's going on, I make sure that I can like commit to this. So
Mhm.
I'll say that.
Mhm.
Wow. So in your early 20s, you heard about mental health, but in schools, you're like, there is no language, there's nothing for it.
Yeah.
Nothing, right? And that's interesting. So, just think about the research that Reagan was talking about, and then you gave additional lived experiences to go with that, and just think about how many other teens or adolescents have experienced and are currently experiencing that when there's no meat or potatoes to this in schools and in the homes. Then there's this misstep with this really segment of the population then that really does not have a buffer, so to speak. And you're saying, hey, that stuff is it's pretty impactful, basically. Mm. Even when you moved out, you're saying it follows you if you don't take care of it. Is that? And it sounds like that's what you're saying. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Reagan, how about you?
Yes. Really quick before I get into my mental health journey, something that Cassie said about like, how we like don't learn about these things in school and things like that. Um, it made me kind of like the sentence formed in my brain, and it's like our education system doesn't analyze American history, it just teaches it to us.
Wow.
And like we need the analyzation of it. Like as kids, we don't need to just know like this is what we did. We need to know like why it was impactful and like
Yes,
why
yes.
it matters and like what you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do with this information. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like they just tell us as students, go do your own research, but that's hard as 14, 15, 16 year olds to go who they're telling you to go read this extensive, in-depth article and
Wow.
like make sense of it your own. Like we need teachers to analyze it for us. And I guess part of that comes with sharing your own personal experiences in the world. And maybe that's why they don't do it because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's experiences are different. And maybe that would be a little bit biased in the way that teachers are analyzing information. But I do think we need a more, I guess, analytical approach to school sometimes instead of just telling us, oh, yeah, this is what we did and this is where we are now. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But explaining my mental health journey, it was very similar to Cassie in a sense. I don't really think like I feel like I've always known about my emotions, but I never knew how to handle them, and I was just kind of told to suck it up. I think the first time I experienced like anxiety and knowing that I felt off was when I was doing gymnastics. That was my first sport growing up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I would notice, like, I would get super, starting the night before, I would get a weird feeling in my stomach and I wouldn't want to eat dinner nor breakfast the next morning. And I wouldn't be able to eat until I finished my competition. And, I just took it as I'm just really nervous, just really anxious. But that same feeling transpired into other areas of my life. And because, I just dealt with it in sports, I just dealt with it in other areas of my life. So I didn't really think about it, my mental health at all. Like with school, I would always put school first, no matter how it was making me feel. I wouldn't really like to have certain conversations because my anxiety would get the best of me. So ultimately, it prevented me from having the difficult conversations that I needed to have as a child growing up. whether that be because I didn't feel like I could talk about it because of my anxiety and just being nervous and just never having had to do that before, or it was because I didn't feel comfortable in my environment. But when I got to college, after going through just a lot of changes, I went from being a student athlete to not being a student athlete to just being a student. My parents were going through a divorce. I went through a really hard breakup for myself, and just losing people and losing connections. That's what made me realize I wanted to go get into therapy, even though I was really resistant to it in the beginning because I don't really like accepting help or asking for help. And I think I could do everything on my own because
That's a big one.
because it's fulfilling. Like, I do like to know I've accomplished something, but I also had to recognize when I might need help sorting through things. And I also realized just like part of one thing that I feel like I didn't shed light on enough about my Caribbean upbringing is just, and I said it earlier about community and family, but I really need that. And that's something I really miss. Like just having my family and it didn't even have to be anything. It could have just be a normal Saturday. It didn't have to be an event or anything, but we would just always be together. And I miss that camaraderie when I got to college, just with my family, with my friends. I was always a part of a team for some sport or something. So I realized I needed to talk to somebody about how all this was making me feel and how to be okay with being alone and opening myself back up again because I feel like COVID kind of put me in a box a little bit. So just all those things combined. But I feel like I only really started caring about my mental health within the last 3 years of me being in college.
Wow.
And yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess I am curious then, um, because well, did you share your age? Do you mind?
Wait, what'd you say?
I said, did you share your age? Do you mind sharing your age?
Oh, when I introduced myself, I totally forgot about that. And I just thank you for reminding me.
I figured
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I'm
it's a
20.
basic thing. That's a basic thing.
I
No,
love
yeah, I
it.
know. I forget. Like at this, since being in college and just all these things, I'm realizing like I forget. Like I have to learn how to properly introduce myself and just the things that you
No,
have to.
you.
You did great.
Yeah.
Right, you did great. That's the only thing that you didn't say, but that's okay. We can ask. Hey, we can still. Hey, whatever we don't know, we can ask, and you're allowed to say or not say. Right there, you go.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But I am 20. I started school, and honestly, this is actually, I'm glad that you asked because it is something that's
Mm-hmm.
shaped me. I started school a year early in New Jersey. I started kindergarten at 4 instead of 5, so I've always been a year younger than everybody in my grade. And it didn't matter to me until I got to like middle school, high school, college, where people started talking about it and would make it a point or make it known. And for me, that was a little difficult because they're just things that you can't experience until you're a certain age, and when everybody around you is at that age and you're not, it's a little frustrating. I was last when it came to getting my license, and then turning 21, turning 18, just all these things. I was always last to do, and
Mm.
it made me feel a little bit left out. And my parents were saying like, of course I wouldn't change anything because this shaped me, and I resonate with the people that I'm around now. But in retrospect, they were like, maybe we wouldn't have done that because you're kind of like in two different spots. Like, even though a year is not that drastic, it can be in certain situations.
Correct. Yes, that is true. Hmm.
Hmm. And so it did bring some challenges, but I think I'm grateful for it. I appreciate it. And I kind of see it as I got a head start to life a little bit. But it also has its other side to it where, I'm graduating college when I'm 20. Now I won't even be 21 when I graduate college, which is an accomplishment, but it's also, I'm going out into the world a lot younger and I'm not as experienced with certain things, which is okay. But, it just has its pros and its cons, but I'm grateful
Absolutely.
for it all.
And you know what? Speaking about grateful, this is a good time because we're almost finished. But so you've been working through your impacts, both of you have, and I was just wondering then, maybe one or two things or three things, three bullet points. What have you learned, and what would you want others listening to know? Right? What have you learned from working through these mental health impacts? sharing so eloquently and passionately about your own experiences, and not just personal, but just environmentally. How have you? So having worked through these, rather, what have you learned? About yourself, or what just and what would you want others listening to know? But notice how I asked you, what have you learned about yourself first, because that's really important. It takes a lot of courage to come onto this podcast and talk to others about this, and staying true to both of you, your passions about wanting to make a difference and want to change that. I really commend you for doing that. So that's my last question.
What I learned about myself. Is there something that comes to mind for you, Reagan, off the top of your head? I don't know.
Yes. If you want me, are you still thinking? Do you
Yes,
want
I'm
me?
still
Okay.
I love
So,
this.
so one thing that I've learned about myself, or I guess I would say learned, but also embraced,
Okay.
is my quirkiness and like my weirdness. And I think people think like weird has a negative connotation, but I kind of see it. I don't think it has any connotation. I just think it's just what it is and how it relates
I
to each
love it.
person.
I love it. All my daughters listening to this podcast. This is awesome.
But
Yes.
like I'm quote unquote weird and like quote unquote nerdy, and I, as an athlete, they kind of make you think like you have to be like a studious or an athlete, but you can't be both. And that was something I struggled with, despite having, I feel like, friends in both sides, because I related to both. It kind of helped. I struggled with like understanding myself at times and embracing who I am. And since being in college, I've started to embrace my quirkiness, and like I, if I do something that might be weird to somebody, that's okay because I like it, or like it makes me feel like I'm being authentic and true to myself. And
I
just
love that. Can I just clap here? I like that. Applause. Woohoo! I love that. Yes.
thank you.
I love
Because like
that.
I just to give an example, like I research a lot of like weird things, or like I just do. I like to know what I'm talking about, so I'll go down like
I do
deep
too,
holes
so
of
you're
like
not
you know.
alone. You're not alone. Yeah, that's so weird. I always tell my friends I'm very much about resources, like as a
Mhm.
teacher, and sometimes it's not that grand. It's very simple, and I'm the same way as you. I just like to know the ins and outs of
Right.
things. And honestly, I use YouTube for a lot of like
I
day to
love
day, no, like day to day, like research or
Uh huh.
no,
Mhm.
that is like a jump up main like a jump off point, especially with like vlogging and stuff. Like anything could be like negative, but I use it to like say just someone's day in the life vlog. Like you can learn like how they go about their day or where they
Right.
things you can do, or just I feel like it's introspective. Like it's just all of what you.
I agree. I YouTube is my best friend as well. Like I'm always on YouTube when it comes to anything. If I need to know, I watch YouTube video,
Yeah.
or I just go on that deep dive. Like it recommends another video. I'm like, oh, so like I like literally know about every single dog breed. I watched this show called like Dogs 101, and it was in depth like 20 minutes about each dog breed, and it had like 3 seasons, and I watched all of it. So
it.
this is an example.
I love embrace the quirky. Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Woohoo! I like that. I love this. I love what you're talking about. How you're embracing, in spite of all these other, negative, overtones or difficulties. Whether it's from your background, whether it's cultural or occupational. I mean, just different things that we've talked about tonight. You're embracing yourself. As you've learned that you can embrace yourself. Yes, you can. That's important.
Mhm.
That's important.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what? And I'll ask you one more question, Reagan, then I'll ask Cassie the same. So, our listeners, because they're listening, I'm thinking some parents are on too. What would you want them to know? What do you want to say? Especially if they're
Um,
raising younger teens, younger ones coming up under your guys' age group, or even, so what would you say? Maybe teachers are listening because people do download this podcast. So let's just land it. You know, what you want to say? Cassie, you're a teacher. Okay.
I
Go.
Oh, I was waiting for Reagan.
wait. Is it me or Cassie? Go ahead, Cassie.
Well, okay. I guess let me start with the first question. Oh, you said, what did I learn about, or what have I learned about myself?
Yeah, as you're taking care of your mental health, what have you learned?
Well,
Right.
it's interesting because I feel like I don't have nothing solid like pops up in my mind as to like, oh, I've like worked through this. But I guess I'll say this, like with trauma or mental health, like it can go one of two ways, and it can, I guess, cause someone to be like boisterous or negative or mean to others.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also have, or it can affect you in the sense that it like makes you like less of yourself. Like you feel like you have to be less of yourself, or you don't consider like you don't stand on your own feelings. You're constantly battling and considering
Mm-hmm.
others, their thoughts, their feelings, because you were like in a chaotic environment, or at least I was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool
that's what
stuff.
sticks. Yes, that's like a major thing that sticks out to me. I guess that I'm still working through. Just the fact that the way that this has all influenced me has like um, I'm still working on being like certain of myself, and
Absolutely.
that being the only voice.
You know, Cassie, when you said that,
I love
I
it.
right before you said that, I was gonna like that same idea popped into my head. So I think it's really funny that you said that because one thing I wanted to say for them that I feel like I need, like I've learned too, is to trust myself,
Mm-hmm.
because like when you don't, and like getting to know yourself, because when you get to know
Yeah.
yourself, you can learn to trust yourself, and then you know what type of situations you
Yeah.
can put yourself in and what you can't, and how to just like maneuver, and you just can really set yourself up for success when you learn what's comfortable to you, what triggers you,
Yeah.
and just all the ins and outs. But it
Wow.
comes with trusting it, yeah.
Um, and then so wait, the second question. My brain works in boxes. What was
It's okay. I just give you guys a round of applause again because that was deep. So yeah, the last
I'm realizing now because I'm
that
like
was deep. No, the
sweating.
last part was what do you want parents to hear, or maybe educators like yourself that are listening? Like, what would you say? What would you say to them? What do you want them to know?
Well, like for students and kids and just even young adults, um, I guess I'll just tell them. Like I feel like other generations always have something to say about the younger generations, or
Oh yes.
and there are a lot of I guess things that you can point out that are like negative in our generation. Um, this just comes to mind. Maybe you'll say music and maybe how depressing or negative it sounds. Like I know there's a lot of like younger artists. I guess I'll say early 20s, not even like my age, 28, but like the music is like very depressing, and I don't know, maybe you would point out and say negative, but I feel like that's a reflection of like the relationship between our generations, and like
Uh-huh.
what Reagan was saying, it's like there's something to learn from that. So what I'll say for our younger generation is that at least like it counts for a lot that you're expressive in
Mm-hmm.
your feelings, because I think we're learning that prior generations weren't able to, or weren't as expressive, didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know how to be because they didn't know themselves, they weren't taught, that's in the whole idea of self is like a new concept or
Mm-hmm.
it's acknowledged differently. So for our generation, I'll just say that it matters that you have all of these feelings, either whether they're good or bad, it matters. And um, to just find a positive way to work with them
Mm-hmm.
and express them,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean ignoring them clearly wasn't serving us, it wasn't serving our parents, or
Mm-hmm.
so I'll say that I love our generation for that. I think we're very smart in that way, like we're very expressive, I'll use that word, so just be smart and find a way to channel it because we're super powerful. I know that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. I'm listening
And
too because I'm a mom with younger ones with teens, so I love it. I can learn. Mm.
And adult, I mean, to teachers, or you said, what would we say? I guess to
Yeah.
parents, or
To parents, yeah. What do you want? What do you want them to know?
um, it's interesting. Now I'm thinking, like, was it my parents? Was it the culture? Was it the abusive household? Was it the generation? Like, is this generation of parents different than my parents?
That's a great question. That's a great
Because
question. Wow.
already I'm sure they have, like I said, the more language and more like reference through media and just everything as far as mental health goes than like previous. So I wonder what I would tell them. I guess just listen and
Listen.
feel
Just listen, huh? Okay.
feel your children.
So if they're going to listen, they're going to need to allow them to express, huh?
Yes.
Right? You see how that goes back, right? If they're going to
so
listen,
it's two-sided.
say it again.
It's two-sided.
It is, right? Notice that. Very good.
Which in our culture, our Caribbean culture, I'll speak to that. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
very one sided.
Yep.
I think we landed. I think we landed this topic. Yes, we did. Amazing. It is one sided. Correct. Wow. Reagan?
Yeah, and so for I guess those in my generation, looking at others that who are older than us, I would say my advice is I've had to learn to give people grace, and I expect things to be done in return in the way that I give them out, and that's just not realistic. And I also had to recognize that, and I guess I'm just speaking to like when people quote unquote disappoint me, because I guess that's one thing I guess I'm always like growing up I was really disappointed with
Uh
certain
huh.
things
That's right.
because of
I'll say I'm that way
expectations.
right now, where it's carried through, like, I guess being younger, but I'm recognizing it now, like the disappointment. It's like,
Hmm.
why are you disappointed?
So you see how this shaping, right? This shaping from this background, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Shaping is powerful. That you guys landed this topic. Wow. Keep going, Reagan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
just like not because people are only doing with what they know.
Yeah.
And like also because just giving an example, like my mom, like having me, she had me when she was 20. My dad was 21. And like I'm 20 right now. So I can't even imagine having a child right now. And so
Ah, that is so funny. Awkward.
no, it is.
Laughter.
And
Yeah, you're right.
I told my mom, like, I silently praise you because I feel like, my mom and I, we do butt heads sometimes. And I think we always, I told her, like, I don't think I praise you enough verbally. And that also comes with the Caribbean household. We don't praise each other enough. And so then,
Wow.
like, we always are criticizing each other instead of, like, giving praise. And I
Mm-hmm.
told her, I was like, I silently praise you a lot, and I should tell you this more because, like, I would be having a child right now if I were in your shoes, and you did a great job. And like, yeah, there were mistakes made, but this is where grace comes into play by,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing they were doing the best with what they knew. But it also goes in hand with the other way around. And what I would tell those who are older than us, looking at younger generations, be open to hearing us out and not just saying, oh, because I'm older, I'm right and you're wrong.
Wow.
And hearing where we're coming from, because I had this talk with another friend just recently. Like, we're all growing and learning in this world together. There's not much, like, there's a lot that separates me from my mom, but there's also so much life experience that we share. So it's only, yeah, 20 years that I wasn't here, but we're 20 years out now, and we've lived the same life with sharing this world. So we're learning the same things. So that doesn't mean that you can't learn from me just
Wow.
because you're older than me.
Wow.
And that goes for teachers and doctors and lawyers and everybody that's already established that thinks that they can't. still learn from those who are coming up underneath you, because we're all learning together in the same time. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to say. I'm not a person that, really don't have words. I have lots of words. I'm very, very grateful. And I just have to give you both another round of applause.
thank
Thank
you.
Yeah,
I'm clapping over here.
it's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming on to Healing of the Heart podcast. Oh, and Cassie, I said I was going to put you on the spot. If you had to pick one of your favorite poems from the book, did you ever like think about what that was or what that is, or is
Yes, it was the one about the narcissist.
that to the narcissist? Oh, you like that one? Okay, all right. I appreciate. Do you have the book with you?
I do. I have the two with me. I still have to give away one of them.
You want to
But
share that? You want to read that one? Read the one to the narcissist. Read that one, and we'll close out with that with some music, and then we'll part ways.
okay, okay. So to the narcissist, such a waste of time taking up my mind, taking up so much space in my heart and head. Always want to take and not give. Is that the way you plan to live? Far be it from me. I have a choice, you see. Your, your unrelenting desire is clear. You give off smoke to distract from the evidence that has always been there. What are you? Who are you? Two faces underneath a dark, bottomless pit. A person empty and cold, pretending to be confident and certain, yet actually waiting to be freed. You have snared and spoiled many.
Wow.
Just one more, you tell yourself, only to remain in the same prison of selfishness, jealousy, and shame. Yet you're unwilling to change and free yourself.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reading that. I appreciate it. So that's your favorite poem. It's interesting. Quite a few persons actually some of that's their favorite one in the book too.
But
So
I
go
wish
ahead.
I had more time with it. Like, I'm very sporadic with like things that I'm like. This is art. Your book is art. I love reading. I love writing. But I've read it once, and I feel like I need it. And I need to read it more times. And I know there's more than one. That just stuck out to me. But I'm already looking at the unknown, and it's reminding me I love that one too.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thanks for sharing your favorite poem and the other one that you're contemplating. I appreciate the feedback and those who are listening to. And that's again, it's always efficacy for me. It's always given back to me as well, letting me know what works and what resonates with the person's heart because that's what I'm going after is the heart. Changing the heart, healing of the heart. Right? You guys landed that again. So thank you so for coming on to this podcast. It's going to be, you can download the podcast. And for those who are listening, who listen from, because we are on every other week. Thank you for listening to this podcast this evening. And yeah, we're gonna close out with the song. And I don't know what song am I gonna close out with. I think I'm gonna go with one. I'm grateful. How about this one?
Oh, I like.
Grateful. I can't sing anymore, guys. I hate that. But we're gonna close out with this song. Tell me what you think.
Oh,
Can you rock to that?
I like this.
You like that?
Yeah, nice vibes. Vibes.
All right, guys. Listen. Have a great evening and have a great rest of the weekend, right? And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.